The mood tracker rolls into Columbia, South Carolina tonight. I was over on the Big Spur earlier today, and I did my usual drop-in. Hey, how you guys been doing? Let's talk about the mood. The mood around South Carolina football is what right now? And we got a ton of great responses over there, and I would encourage you, if you're a South Carolina fan, you haven't participated. It's not like I'm going to lock the thread after the show's over, so I'm having a lot of fun over there with those guys. But South Carolina football is so clearly in a better position right now than anyone out there could have expected after year one under Shane Beamer. I know that you have the usual critics out there. They're probably Clemson fans or Georgia fans or Florida fans. You cannot expect them to give a rational take on your program. So aside from the casual detractors whose opinions because of other affiliation you just need to eliminate from your life, how can any neutral observer or actual South Carolina fan look at the football program right now and say anything other than, wow, they're way ahead of the schedule I had in mind, at least? That's exactly where South Carolina football is. And so I was scrolling through all the responses, and I was gauging a couple of my buddies who are South Carolina fans, and the mood around South Carolina football right now is strapped in. That's what they are. There's excitement, but there was excitement when Shane Beamer got hired. I wouldn't say everyone was strapped in yet because there were a couple of big fears. No one wanted to talk about them, but you had them in the back of your mind. But as far as I can tell, those fears have kind of been eliminated. I'll talk about the fears in a second, but I just want, for argument's sake and for context, to remind you, Shane Beamer's hire was so critical because Shane Beamer was the guy the fan base wanted. This is not a situation where the fan base backed one of their own, but then the administration went and hired a guy that checked more of their boxes, and so a guy came in and he was needing to prove it to the fan base and win the fan base over. Shane Beamer didn't have to win the fan base over because Shane Beamer is one of them. So he came home to them. It's a culture fit. It's the same thing Arkansas did with Pittman. So they were already thrilled and ecstatic, but then what did he do in year one? They didn't have to swallow a 2-win season. They won 7 games, and why is that important? Context, folks. The over-under win total started at 3.5, and it was 4 by the time the season kicked off. So they went over by a solid 3 games. They beat Florida in year one under Beamer. They beat Auburn in year one under Beamer. They capped it with a Duke's Mayo Bowl win, memorable Duke's Mayo Bowl win, over North Carolina. Can you imagine telling a Gamecock fan that before the season? Oh, and by the way, quarterback was a total disaster for him, a mess all year. And now, afterwards, they've gone and attacked the transfer portal, and they've got Spencer Rattler and they got Stogner, and they're not done in all likelihood with doing that. So they got a little Michigan State vibe about them, to be honest with you, in the way that they've chosen to attack the portal. But the biggest fears being eliminated are just this. Shane Beamer comes in, the crowd wanted him. The crowd's ecstatic because they got him, but there's a big fear. You do not win football games at a podium. You don't win them during spring, and you certainly don't win them on Twitter. So they hit home runs on all those fronts. Everyone loves when Shane Beamer talks. The guy's very influential. He's very interactive. So Shane Beamer plays well. But we've seen coaches play well in those arenas, and they end up sucking on Saturdays. Shane Beamer, he did all the former, but then when it came time to prove it in the latter category, they did it. They won 7 games in year one. They're recruiting well. They're killing it in the transfer portal. They have exceeded every possible expectation out there. And what happened is you eliminated the biggest fear. The biggest fear to me about any new coach, Shane Beamer included, is what happens when the sugar high wears off. Because everyone loved it when he came in the door. I did too. We loved it as a program here. Our program, we loved it for their program because we love South Carolina. I love the way that he handled it, very interactive, very open. The program's very open. But the concern was, what if they get in the season and they just get drug? And it's so far beyond the pale that it's really hard to get people to still buy in. That's totally eliminated. Totally eliminated. And so now that's why everyone's strapped in. You can be excited, but still be a little bit hesitant. Now that you've seen some of those boxes get checked in year one, you feel very confident that, well, if we did that in year one, we're certainly not going to take 14 steps back in year two. And we've already seen sort of the positive context boxes being checked too. Staff's all in. I think they're turning that into a destination for coaches, by the way. I feel the same way about North Carolina and South Carolina. I feel like those have become secret destination spots for assistant coaches. Not that they weren't always, but it used to be that assistant coaches looked and just flat out thought, there are things I want to accomplish professionally that I may not be able to at South Carolina. I don't know if they think that way anymore. You can say the same thing about Arkansas. I don't know that they're thinking that way anymore. Now, what do you look for moving forward is you look for the same thing, week over week, year over year, incremental improvement. They need more depth. Places like defensive end, a lot of folks on the Big Spur were talking about this. There was a lot of back and forth about offense from a philosophical standpoint. Do you keep your offensive coordinator? Do we like the way things are progressing offensively? Here's what I'll tell you. I choose to look at that from a much higher altitude than maybe you guys, because you watch every play of every game. I get all that. But you got to understand that stuff. If you've got the right coach and you've got the right culture in the house, it will work itself out. And if the head coach endorses the guy and believes in the guy, maybe it works out. But here is the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is you don't have the right fit. If you got the right fit at head coach and you got the right culture, this other stuff falls into place. Maybe not overnight, but this other stuff falls into place. South Carolina folks, as they should be, are now strapped in. And I'll tell you, outside of Georgia, who else are you looking around the East and just immediately penciling in a loss to? You may not be doing that with Georgia either, but you're not doing that with anyone else. You're not even doing it with Clemson right now. Clemson looks more vulnerable than they have in several years. And I know for a long time, from the 2015 through 2020 era, people looked at the direction of these two programs respectively, and you thought to yourself, there's no way South Carolina will ever come back. Yeah, they will. Yeah, first off, they don't have to go all the way up there and catch Clemson. Clemson could come back to the pack. Stranger things have happened. Well, now, you sort of see two things happening at once. You see one program trending one way, one program, I'm not going to say trending because it's still very, very small sample size, but Clemson looks to have maybe begun a little bit of a coming back to the pack, or maybe some turnover in the program. It's a good time to be a South Carolina Gamecock fan, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of opportunity here. And that Shane Beamer contract, by the way, I don't know how to talk about this specifically, but I'll put it out there. Whatever Shane Beamer's making right now, it's on the lower end of the SEC totem pole. I'm not going to sit here and wave the flag for folks to get raises, because if I do that, I'm going to open my DMs, and there are going to be 37 coaches asking me to advocate for them. It's already happened a few times without me talking about it. I will just independently say this. Whatever the dollar amount is that Shane Beamer's making right now, I think in very short time he will be making more than the current dollar figure he makes. Have I been clear? I think I've been pretty clear. So it's a good time to be a South Carolina fan. Got a lot of places that we want to get to this spring to visit. South Carolina is definitely one of them. I probably should arrange that with them before I just say it out loud on air.